Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this Netflix review. The fact that you're willing to sacrifice a few minutes out of your day to watch my reviews really does mean the world to me. And for those of you that are unaware, I review as much as humanly possible when it comes to new releases on Netflix. So if you're ever curious about whether something is good, bad, or completely mediocre, come to my channel and I'll let you know. I want to become your go-to Netflix guy. I want you to think Netflix reviews. I want you to think Caleb Janssens. So guys, subscribe, get engaged, and let's jump right into this review of Feel Good Season 2. And Feel Good Season 2 continues the story of Mae. So Season 2 of Feel Good continues the story of Mae, and it continues her story and her arc from Season 1. We see her struggling with everyday life. We see her struggling with PTSD, interactions with loved ones, with relatives, and how is she going to navigate through this next section in her life? Is she going to continue as a stand-up comic, or is she going to spend more time focusing on her relationship with George? And that is ultimately what the series is about. So let's dive right into the things that worked, the things that didn't really work, and then finally my actual analysis of the show and whether I would recommend it to you guys or not. So let's start off with what I really loved about this series. The performances were great. I really loved every single performance from all of the actors. They all surprised me. I could really engage with the performances. They felt real, they felt organic. And at times I feel like the scripts really let the actors down. But when they did have something of substance that they could really dive into, they gave such great performances that I really enjoyed. Anyway, performances were great. They were awesome. In regards to story and character development, this is where I'm in two minds at the moment. The first two episodes really tackle this idea of PTSD, of addiction, and how do we move on from that? And for me, for whatever reason, that's something that really vibes with me. That's something that really gels with me. And so I wish we spent more time focusing on the themes that are explored in the first two episodes. Ultimately, we get a lot of character development throughout the rest of the series, but it feels almost like it's happy accidents that build the character up rather than the character themselves really focusing on themselves and trying to improve. And that's where I get a little bit annoyed when it comes to the script. Very often, we get characters that ultimately get themselves in trouble through nothing other than their own ignorance or their own ability to just not get in trouble. And so that can be a little bit infuriating as a viewer, going, if you do this, you're going to screw up, you're going to get in trouble. If you do this, this is exactly what's going to happen. And then the characters do it, and it's like, well, I knew that was going to happen. And very often with this series in particular, especially when it comes to Mae, we've got her saying, I'm working on myself, I'm going to improve, I'm going to change this. And the next episode you're like, but did you now? Did you really? And I actually understand that's great. That's a perfect representation of how we as humans view addiction, view working through struggles and stuff like that. Because I know through my own personal battles, you always say, that's it, I'm done, this is never going to happen again. What happens later? You've done it. And so it's a great way to see how do recovering addicts handle different topics and handle different situations. And that was another segment of the series I really enjoyed. So the things I loved most about, and then I also just want to point out the cinematography. While it was serviceable in some points, other places really made scenes really stand out and they were beautiful and they were intense. I feel like the series also tackled PTSD really well. When Mae has panic attacks, you can actually feel how tense everything gets. And it's great when you as a viewer can have an emotional reaction to what the character's feeling without them having to say it. And so there's a lot of positives about this series. There's a lot of good about this series, but I don't think it necessarily distracts from the negatives. I did basically mention the script and how I feel like the script was definitely weak at times. But then another thing I really struggled with were some of the characters. And ultimately the characters' decisions to live out specific lifestyles and how it negatively impacts their life. I've had the exact same issue with both Special and with Sexify. My biggest issues with those series were, as I mentioned earlier, the characters do something that's obvious to the viewer is going to end up with you screwing up. And you decide, I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately, your idea becomes based around this idea of, if I do this, I'm going to hurt those around me. And it happens, but then the moral of the story is, I have to learn to love myself. And while it's important to actually care about yourself and love yourself, I think self-love as a sole point of a series can be incredibly dangerous. I feel like too many people don't realize the dangers of self-love. Self-love can lead to an incredibly selfish lifestyle. And so when you get series like this, which gratefully actually doesn't really say that, because the series is more about interacting with people and relationships and how do you balance everything so that your life and your screw-ups don't negatively impact people in such a way that their lives fall apart. And so again, when you analyze a series through that domain, it can get really deep and really exciting, and you can engage with it. But I will say this series definitely isn't for everyone. In my opinion, I feel like more people are going to enjoy this series than something like Sexify or like Special, but I feel like it definitely caters towards the LGBTQ community more than, for example, your stereotypical white guy or conservative. But this was definitely a series that I would recommend people check out because it does have these moments where you can really invest with characters and get engaged with them and feel like you're on a journey with them. And that's the sign of a good series and a well-made story. But guys, thank you so much for watching this review. You guys are the best. You're awesome. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. And I hope to see you again in another review.